For years, Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, has been insisting that humanity's best shot at long-term survival is to eventually transform into a multi-planetary species. He's mentioned increased levels of carbon pooling in the Earth's atmosphere, extreme droughts, and losing biodiversity as precursors to a looming, unavoidable catastrophe. He began developing the Starship in 2016, which was supposed to ferry cargo and, eventually, 100 passengers between the Earth, Moon, and Mars. Don't forget to watch today's video to the very end for the shocking discovery on Mars that has left us all intimidated. The ultimate Mars simulation. By 2021, NASA had contracted SpaceX to work on a modified Starship vehicle for its Artemis program. Musk seemed focused on developing the core infrastructure that would eventually be required in order to sustain life, both on Earth and on the Moon, Mars, or even beyond. But Musk soon realized he could not build an off-planet living environment merely on his own. Ever the showman, and with his great fortune approaching $1 trillion, Musk made a show of an audacious contest called the Colony Prize. He claimed he would award $1 billion to any team that could build and operate an underground, airtight colony of 100 people for a 2-year period. In other words, the ultimate Mars simulation. Musk was privy to the fact that, for humans to thrive off-planet, regenerative systems would be required to be developed at a scale that has never before been achieved. The International Space Station once had as many as 13 astronauts on board, but typically only 6 or 7 resided in the ISS at once. Colonists were also required to grapple with long periods of confinement. The typical ISS mission was around 6 months. A better example for elucidating a 100-person enclosed society was a submarine. But even the longest submerged and unsupported mission topped out at 111 days at max. Winning the Colony Prize would require keeping the doors sealed tight for in excess of 700 days. The rules. The contest rules were quite simple by design. Entrants were to design and assemble airtight canisters into a closed, fully living environment. Those canisters, which would start out as empty, modular, self-contained spaces that would fit snugly into the cargo bay of a rocket, could be set up as living quarters, science labs, farms, schools, water treatment systems, manufacturing facilities, and everything considered necessary to support a community. Colonies were encouraged to be inclusive of facilities to support concerts, sports, and other forms of recreation. Once set up and loaded with supplies, the doors would be sealed and the mission clock would start. Over time, this kind of a plan could replicate some aspects of life in the days preceding extreme weather becoming our new normal. Finding the right subjects. Along with container reconfiguration plans and simulations, contest entrants were required to submit a list of potential colony inhabitants, the justification for their selection, and a detailed plan to ensure the quality of life. There was an important caveat, though. The colony couldn't just consist of a bunch of carefree early 20-somethings who, back in the halcyon days of the aughts, might have attended Coachella like crazy potheads. Every colony had to reflect the full spectrum of a society, a mix of families, couples without children, and even single people. The prize was meant, in part, to test population expansion in a closed system. That meant that facilities to manage pregnancies, deliveries, and infant care, as well as various health issues and the various stages of life, had to be taken care of. Selected teams would then have 11 years to build, refine, and live within their structures, and there was absolutely no limit to how many colonies could win the $1 billion award on successful completion. Musk's full support. Colonies would receive full support from Musk's various companies: SpaceX, Tesla, The Boring Company, which is his tunnel and underground infrastructure company, Chia, his energy-efficient blockchain and smart transaction platform, NovoFarm, his indoor precision agriculture company, Neuralink, his implantable brain-machine interface company, and Programmable Matter, which is the maker of materials that can shapeshift to respond to the environment or user input. Feasibility studies and infrastructure pathfinders had been completed by now, so then a crucial aspect was location. Future Mars colonies would need to be built underground. Mars lacks a magnetic field and radiation levels on the surface are rather dangerously high. The surface is super cold. Building underground would provide radiation shielding and thermal insulation. Tunnels would be constructed by The Boring Company. Its automated Proof-Rock 5 machines could porpoise, basically meaning that they could be launched from the surface, tunnel underground at a rate of almost 1 mile per day, and then surface again after completion. Tesla produced stainless steel cylinders that fit neatly into said tunnels. They were like shipping containers, except that they were shaped like canisters of Pringle chips and had electric drive systems so that they can move slowly under their own power. The interior of the canisters could be customized to house virtually just about anything, such as private quarters, hydroponic farms, or surgical facilities. They could work independently for a short period, but they would typically be linked together to form a more complex system, the most straightforward configuration being a chain, such as that of a subway train. Tesla also built solar and battery systems, while SpaceX handled both transportation and communications with its Starlink satellites. The companies had previously installed systems on the moon under its contract with NASA, so we guess the colonies would have no shortage of electricity and bandwidth. Musk to reward ambition. Musk made it very clear in his instructions to those aiming for the colony prize that ambition would be highly rewarded. The goal is to create habitable places not just to live, but live well. Build the colony where you and your family can thrive with the right kind of people, and consider how it might continue to grow to become fully self-sustaining. Tesla then began shipping thousands of canisters and power systems to such colonies, inclusive of such varied locales as Bloomington, Indiana, and Humboldt, Iowa, Dalmeny, Saskatchewan, and Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada, Hwaseong in United Korea, Beijing and Dadonggen in China, Harda in India, Rumuruti in Kenya, and Nucho in Norway. Along with their partners, teams began customizing canisters and linking them together to form what, from a distance, could be taken for high-tech hamster enclosures, setting them up on the surface first and testing them extensively in preparation for the next moving underground phase. Struggling to meet milestones. Initially, the teams seemed to be struggling to meet their milestones. Creating a sustainable canister for a single family to survive for a few years is hard enough. Scaling it to an entire community and having some resemblance to normal life deep underground is a far more complicated endeavor. There were definitely some detractors. Certain people referred to the colonies as ant farms, hamster cages, and self-filling prisons. But the colonists shrugged off these barbs. They believed in their canisters and tunnels as being great places to live, work, and raise a family. The environment was free from all pathogens. Extreme surface weather events weren't even noticeable underground. Tunnels also proved safe for the firenadoes that are expected to be ravaging large swaths of North America and Western Europe in the summer of 2044. These underground colonies provided refuge from disastrous surface storms, but the experiment didn't seem to change basic human nature. Before sealing, psychographic data was collected on all community members to make sure they could withstand living in an enclosure with just 99 other people, but no one was able to accurately predict the ideal community composition. Neurodiverse candidates had been allowed, though people with panic disorder or ADHD, or who were very prone to depression, were strongly discouraged. Also, those who had anger management issues or who displayed signs of narcissistic personality disorder were typically excluded. Yet still, some community leaders changed the rules or outright broke them. Wealthy donors expected access and privileges in return for their hefty investments, which often meant jumping the line in front of way more qualified or suitable candidates. Some donors even bought their teenagers a colony stint, hoping it would land their kids at more prestigious colleges later in life. Others thought it would be the ultimate status vacation or a method to boost traffic to their virtual media channels, and so insisted that they make the list. Fair share of failures. The program saw its fair share of failures too. In certain colonies, vicious politicking, infighting, and scandal plagued inhabitants the second the doors closed. In Visionary Valley, for example, the funders were focused on managing the community as they would a business. Within 2 months, the colony completely imploded. The funders had insisted that only they should know the lock codes to key resources, such as those of food and water stores. They also built a colony-wide surveillance system that could be viewed using only their very own biometric authentication. This wasn't made privy to colony members in advance, who realized, once they were all underground, that a hierarchical system was in place that reflected the power and wealth imbalance they'd endured on the surface. However, the intellectual view these not as failures, but the learning curve that was the entire aim of this Elon Musk program, for sometimes the subjects would visit the surface at nighttime. Lying on the very ground and without any light pollution, they would marvel at the canopy of stars above them. The stars seemed to whisper as they twinkled. "Come, humans, explore. Mars and other planets, we're waiting." With that, we end this video. Consider subscribing to join in next time for more of such interesting content.